Good evening, guys. I'm Chris, and welcome back to this Wednesday's episode of Rift Amps. Right, the silver plate export basement. I've gone through and removed all of the mods, removed the mid control, got rid of that, although it's still sitting in the hole just to fill that up. Rebuilt that awful Marshall channel back as a standard bass channel, and guess what? Sounds better than ever. Normal channel, much improvement. Redone the mains wiring, given the thing a good old service, and it's running wonderfully on the bench. Now, it's not the cleanest amp. There is a lot more that you could do to this, but you are talking a lot more money at that point and all those things. So we've now reached a point where the amp is usable, it's giggable, it sounds brilliant. And as long as the owner keeps on top of servicing and maintenance on this thing, it will go on for a very long time. Eventually, at some point, it probably will be worth stripping everything out, giving everything a good old clean, and replacing bits as required, because it is starting to reach. It's at the very bottom of the mountain, and at the very top would be a replacement board. So we're now reaching that point where you have to start thinking further ahead with your servicing and maintenance on these things. But yeah, as I always say, if you demod an amplifier, often it sounds better. Q&A time. Right. First of all, thank you to everyone who made a comment and watched all the videos lately. My viewing numbers have gone through the roof, especially on the Bonfire Night special, so thank you to everyone. Anyway, we'll start off with Chicken Lickin', who says, Fender silver panel / silver plate? No. In case you did not know, they are referred to as silver face. No, you're wrong. The whole industry stopped using the face suffix quite a long time ago. We moved on from that, especially on the black and brown amps, and I'm sure you can understand why. It's also worth noting that in period they weren't referred to that at the time. It's only after the fact that's what people started calling them, and in my opinion and many others' opinion, it's not right. So we use panel or plate. It's more accurate as a description for what it is, and of course there are no racial under or overtones implied. Weather update: it is sunny and very, very cold. Should we finally get on with this thing then? So this is the GIBSON GA15RV, the one that's came in a couple of weeks back now. It's come in for lots of cracks and popples, and service it as required. So these were made by Trace Elliot back in the 90s, and they were quite popular. I think Trace Elliot did their own version of one too, but this one, really nice. Got this nice metal grille, covered in this brown fake leather style Tolex. Nice corner protectors. The Tolex is starting to come away on all sides, but it does look quite nice like that. It's got kind of a road-worn look to it, I think. If we spin this thing around, it's got the 3 controls on the back: volume, tone and reverb, with a bright switch as well, a high and a low input, switchable output, Class A valve guitar amplifier. All your bits and pieces. So it's got a Pento triode mode as well. Celestine blue I can see in there. I know we've done a quick walk around on this before, but let's get this thing apart and actually have a look inside. Johnny Moondog says, greetings Chris, ever considered a valve guitar preamp only build? With all the amp in box products these days, which could be considered preamps in many ways, it seems like a good idea. Cheers from Canada. Wow, Canada, thank you. Yeah, do you know what? I have thought about it a lot. It's one of those things that every so often you think, maybe I should do that. The problem is that these things started to become popular 5-6 years ago, and then everyone kind of jumped on that bandwagon, and I didn't. Unfortunately, the market is now quite saturated with them, and demand is dropping. So if I was going to develop something like that, one, it would be quite expensive, and two, there just isn't really the demand for them anymore. Yes, some people will buy them, but not enough to justify doing it. Now, saying that, for guitar stuff, no, but for bass stuff, that's a different kettle of fish. So, and that is something I've always thought about doing, you know, a nice pedal board preamp for bass that just sounds really damn good. And I think once I've got my Deep Riff Mark II done, maybe it's time to explore something like that. I don't know. Thing is, I've got so many new products and things in my head, and new designs and new things that I want to do and want to get done, that something like that is always quite far down the list. So I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, not for guitar. I think that ship has sailed. People are moving on to other things now. Okay, so in the cabinet itself, reverb tank up on the side there, and the speaker connections were made with some spade terminals, which I'm not really a fan of. There's a lot of play in that. Anyway, UK made transformers. Very nice. Tiny output transformer, but then again, it is only a 15 watt amp. 2 EL84s, Harmers in this case, and they look very toasty. They've certainly been running hot. And there's a lot of dust on this amp. The thing I don't like is this retainer. I've actually moved it back into place, but I found it like that. You can see the sort of twist it puts on the valves, and it will go each way, and there's a lot of play, which can't be good for the pins. But I do think these are going to need replacing anyway. So what can we do to fix that? Well, if I pull this off, can we not get a spring retainer into those holes on each side and give them their own individual retainer? Would that not be better? Maybe. 2 preamp valves, no shields. This one is wonky. Again, a Harmer. And that's about it for the top. So, go on, get in the hole. Let's spin this thing over and have a look inside. This is a PR18 Brown. It's just come in for a quick service and a quick sort out. And I wanted to show you something really, really cool that I've just spotted out the corner of my eye. So, as you know, with a bias tremolo amplifier, the bias circuit is turning off the output valves and back on and back off, on, off, on, off, on, off, like that. When they're switched off, obviously they're pulling less current. When they're switched on, they are pulling current. You switch them off, they pull less current. Okay. This here is the HT fuse inside the amp, and there's a tiny, tiny wire inside it. Watch what happens when I turn the tremolo control up. It's moving in time with the tremolo. Obviously there's more current being pulled through it, and then less current, then more current. And if I turn the speed up, it moves quicker. Try and get this stable for you. Turn it down. And then if I go all the way off, it stops moving. It's alive! AG says, don't understand why anyone would start work on a custom amp design without some kind of deposit payment. Well, it's probably because I didn't quite explain it well enough in the last video. Often, I can't even quote for a custom design until I've done a feasibility study, and where I take, I check that actually this thing is possible, or there might be other things that need considering before you can even put something like that together. So, and that's quite often the case. And regarding that amp, obviously I can clone an amp. That's not an issue. But it's whether I could fit it into a Princeton Reverb chassis in that kind of form factor and make everything work how I wanted. So I did have to do that. Now, I'm personally not comfortable charging a customer for that up front, just for a feasibility study. Is this thing actually going to be possible? I don't think people should be charging for that. Or at least I won't be charging for that. It means you win some, you lose some. It's not the end of the world, but that's kind of the way it is. So, but obviously I wouldn't start anything proper. No, no chassis work, no wiring, nothing without a deposit. Trace Elliott Velocet 12R. That's what the PCB says anyway. Made in Great Britain. All test point voltages are DC with respect to test point 0 volts, except where indicated. In memory of Steve Claxton. Cool. Build date sticker. It's UK, so that will be the 11th of March 99, not the 3rd of November for the Americans. Built by Christine. There you go. So it's folded piece of metal is the chassis with some foam tape on it. PCB design, as you can see. And we're just having a look through. Visual inspection, as we always do. Can we find anything burnt, damaged, exploded, anything out of the ordinary? Does that cap look okay? Yes, it does. That one, that one. None of those are venting. Okay, so nothing. Maybe some slight discoloration on this resistor here. It might just be a trick of the light. It looks worse with your eyes than it does on camera. But okay, no damage there. So the next step, of course, will be to fire it up. Are any of the fuses blown? No. Switch gear. Sorry, next step will be to fire this up on the bench. And see what's coming up with. I'm going to have to think of a way to connect these up to... We have to use test leads. Easy enough. Right, yes. Sorry, I keep starting sentences and then thinking of something else halfway through and then not finish the sentence. I do apologise. So that's where we are. I suspect, I'm going to have to do some research on it, that it's just going to need a good old damn service. Clean everything up, especially the sockets. Do we have any cracked solder joints on the valve sockets? Not that I can see. Right then, more investigation required. Kelly's Woodyard says, we understood in 1 second that the valves were microphonic. We didn't need a drum solo. I hate drum solos. If you actually watch the clip, you'll see I'm not playing a drum solo on it, even though it was a rhythm. I'm trying to identify which of the valves was microphonic. Yes, we knew one of them was, because you could hear it, but you could tap one that's not microphonic and the other one would hear it. So it was important for me to identify which of those valves was actually microphonic. You just got to see that on camera. And of course, if you hate stuff like that, you don't need to watch the channel. This is the Deluxe Reverb, the 64 hand-wired one that I showed you all a couple of weeks back now. I finally got round to completing the work on it. Grab a chopstick, bear with me. And it's now up and running on the bench. It's doing 12.5 volts into 8 ohms, which is 19.5 watts. So what have I done? So first thing I did was sort out the reverb socket and do the anode wire, the parallel connection around the socket rather than over the top. Makes a huge improvement. I converted it from a DC coupled mixer to an AC coupled. All you do is you just move the blue wire, which ran from here to here, and instead you run it around the top. You put a 47 nanofarad cap in series, and you just tie it into that point there. That removes probably 85 to 90% of the noise problems that this amp has. Nice and easy. Finally, other thing was the high voltage supply wire coming from this grommet. It comes along the back of the board through this hole up here. On this particular amp, I've shortened it now, but it was all the way up and over. It was a huge aerial. So I've now just shortened that. That really helped with some noise. And finally, I've just done some shielded wiring from the input jacks and the volume controls on both channels to the associated sockets. And that's it. And now it's so quiet. It's unbelievably quiet. You could go further, but we're always limited by time and money and all those things. But where this amp is now compared to where it was is a million miles away. Mike M. Colorado, regular commenter on the channel, says, "Hi Chris, I have never seen you use a Variac. Have I missed it? Or is it just not part of your regular toolkit? Great channel, thanks." No, you're absolutely right, Mike. The thing is, you're always told that you need a Variac, that it's an important tool for the workshop, and everyone should have one and you should learn to use it, right? Well, I've got one, and in easily the last 5 years, guess how many times I've actually needed to use it? 0. Just not one of those things that regularly needs using. Anything that I might use it for, you can do with a light bulb limiter. Just use different wattage bulbs if you're trying to reform stuff. And quite frankly, it's a pain in the arse getting it out and setting it up. So I just never come across the need to use it. Now, there's that great old saying, isn't there, that give a man a hammer and he'll use it to fix everything. And that's the problem, is that people overuse tools or use it instead of something more appropriate. So I just never come across the need to actually use a Variac. So it never comes out. One day I will, maybe we'll find a use where that is the absolute best tool for the job. Best meaning quickest or most efficient or whatever. But yeah, there's just no need for one. Okay, it's on the bench. It's a bit of a Heath Robinson setup, but we're driving my 16 ohm load now. In fact, I'm not driving anything because there's no signal plugged in. I've just fired this thing up and it made one hell of a crack. I've got the other microphone on the speaker, so hopefully it does it again. So the volume control affects the noise. So if I turn the volume control up, and down, we get rid of it, which tells me the noise is being generated upstream of the volume control. All the valves are lighting up, I think. Yeah, we can just about see this one. some very interesting noises. Let's quickly measure its output. Standard setup. So this is a 1 kilohertz, 150 millivolt sine wave being ejected into the front end. Tone control on 0. And here's our output sine wave. About there. 16 volts. 16 volts output into 16 ohms. We never measure anything at 16 ohms. 16 volts into 16 ohms is 16 watts. Oh, something smells hot. But we're getting quite a nice sine wave. Let's bring the so let me turn the light off. You can see the screen better. Treble control makes a difference. You can see it doing things. What does it say on the back here? It's upside down. Output power pentode 15 watts RMS, triode mode 6 watts RMS, 30 watts peak. So let's try. Oh, you see that? See all that jumping around there? It's definitely doing something. So they set it for 15 watts, which will be 15.5 volts. Oh, I can't. It's doing that by itself. I'm not touching it. I'm not touching it. There's some very weird things going on with this amplifier. Okay. So that's 15.5 volts. Triode mode. Drops it down to about 9 volts. God, it's not happy though, is it? Which is 5 watts. Okay, fair enough then. They actually measured this properly. But yeah, that's where we are with it. It's making some funny noises. It's not performing well. I've had enough of that. Right. More updates on this in the next video. Regal DF says, I'm aware you were limited to a 2 hours job on the single-ended plexi kit, but as you mentioned your ideas on mods at the end, I have some thoughts on additional improvements, such as increasing those ridiculous 1 microfarad bypass cathode caps to at least 10 or 15 microfarads to let more bass come through. You see, that's a common mistake that people make, in that they see a small value cap and think, if I could make the bottom end better by adding more bass, by bypassing more frequencies through the cathodes into the signal path. Now, with a single-ended amplifier, and especially one like that, it's not about, when you have a small value cap like that, a 1 microfarad cap, for example, or a 680 nanofarad is a common value, it's not about reducing bass, it's about tightening bass, making the bottom end more controllable and more stable and more punchy, right? Too much bass, too large a cap value can make the bottom end flubby, spongy, and on an amp like that, that's probably not a good thing. So it's not just about finding the cutoff point and measuring how much bottom end there is. It's about the other aspect, which is tight versus loose, firm versus soft, etc., etc. And so where you've got a small value capacitor like that, there's often a reason for it. In fact, if you look at a lot of modern, really high gain amplifiers, they use very small value caps throughout. I mean, your coupling caps might only be 1 nanofarad because it's all about keeping that bottom end under control. Well, that's it then, guys. Thank you very much for watching once again. As always, please give this video a thumbs up. All your comments and questions down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Our subscriber numbers are going up at a vast rate of knots now, so thank you so much. If you're feeling super generous, why not join the channel like these guys have, and I will catch you all at the next one.